Okay, good morning. In this tutorial, I'm going to introduce you to Rhinoceros and to some of the basic modeling capability and to some of the basic transformation capability, and how we prepare some solid files that you might want to use for exporting to 3D printer, or alternatively using them to section solids to create laser cut parts, which we've covered in another tutorial. So we're just going to cover some of the basic modeling and some of the transformation capabilities of Rhinoceros. Okay, so let's start it up. Okay, let's close that. Okay, so here we are. What we've got is four screens, four windows on the screen. This one is the top, this one's labeled perspective, this one's labeled front, and this one's labeled right. You can, of course, change any of these. By clicking on it, I can change the nature of the view, wireframe, shaded, rendered, ghost, etc. I can set the view to these different views as well, so I can change the right one to the left or the bottom, 2-point perspective, whatever I want. What we're going to concentrate on today is some of the tools that we've got available to us. Firstly, you can see you have, like the other software that we've been using, we have these palettes of tools down the side, and we have some across the top. We have different tabs across the top that give us some tools to work with. And what we're going to be working with today is we're going to click and hold that button, then I'm going to release it. I'm going to move over to this little gray bar at the top and just pull that out. This is solid creation, and what we have here is a palette of tools that allow us to create some solids. So if I click, I've created, and if I right click my mouse, I can then just start to orbit around that box, and you can see I'm looking at it from the top, from the front, and from the right in these other windows, and I can zoom in and zoom out in all of those as well by rolling the mouse button. I'm going to change this to shaded so I can see sort of what I've got. So there we go, we've got a little block, and we have quite a variety of things that are available to us here: cylinders, spheres, sphere diameter, ellipsoid, truncated pyramid, truncated cone. Let's do a cylinder. So if I'm now operating in my top window, and you can see it's got a slightly different color to the other three. So whenever I move from window to window, the one that my cursor is in changes color to show me that I'm active in that window. And the reason for that is that I'm now in the top view, and I can draw a cylinder in that top view and change the height of it. But also, I can go to the front view. If I press spacebar, it will invoke the last command, which was a cylinder, and in the front view I can also create a cylinder. So depending on where I use my and invoke this command, in which window I draw it in that world view. So that immediately starts to give us some interesting possibilities in how we can start to create shapes in these different views and put them together. Okay, so we have a variety of things there that we can do as far as modeling goes. We can also move things around once they're in this view by clicking on it and selecting it and just starting to move my mouse. I can drag that around. I can do the same, click and drag the rectangle as well in the top view or the front view if I think that's useful. There are other things that we can do. Under transform, which is the other area that we're going to be working today, transform, I can move, copy, rotate 3D, so I can rotate that object. I have it selected. Now if you look up here, you get little prompts for each one of your commands that will help guide you through what information you should be giving it and when. So it asks for the center of rotation, so I can put the center of rotation here. Angle of first reference point, let's do that there, and then the second reference point, I'll do that there. So I can rotate my object in the front view. I can go to the right view. I can select the cylinder, press spacebar, and rotate again. Another object, this time in a different plane. So you can see quickly you can start to develop some interesting shapes with just those basics, and then just using our transform and our basic transform commands. Okay, so what we have at the moment is 3 individual things. There are other commands that we can use here as well, and we're going to use this set of tools here, the Boolean commands. And again, I'm going to click and hold, and when that pops out, I'm going to release my mouse button and then click on that and just drag that window out so you can see what we've got here. These are some solid tools. This is a Boolean union, a Boolean difference, and a Boolean intersection, which lets us do a number of interesting things. For example, I can join 2 objects or more together. Boolean union. I'm going to click on that, and now it says select the surfaces or the polysurfaces to union. So I'm going to select my square, my rectangle, and the cylinder, and press enter when done. Again, I'm just following the commands. Enter. Now, what it has done, it has turned those 2 individual objects into a single object, which is important if you are 3D printing. 3D printers only want one object in them to print, and if you have multiple objects, you get some very confusing things happening. There's also a Boolean difference. So let's click that, and it says select the surface or polysurfaces to subtract from. Well, I shall subtract from that one and press enter to continue. Again, following the prompt, select the surface or polysurface to subtract with. I'd like to subtract that form from the other form and press enter when done. And then if we zoom in, you can see very quickly we've started to create quite an interesting little object just from these basic commands, creating solids, unioning, differencing solids, and also doing some basic rotating commands. But it doesn't end there. Now we have a single object here. We're going to work with some more of these interesting transformation tools, which are very powerful. The twist one, for example. Let's go to our front view, and it asks start of the twist axis. I'm going to start it there, end of the twist axis. Let's end it just up there. The first angle reference point, let's start it there, and then the second angle reference point. And let's move it a little bit. Here we go, let's zoom in here. You can see how we're starting to twist that a little bit there. You see that? So let's do it there. But now if we have a look at that, it's getting hard to see it with a lot of lines. Let's change that from shaded to rendered to ghosted. Rendered. There we go. So you can see we're starting to get something kind of interesting there. Select it again, transform. What else have we got? Well, we have others. I mean, that was twist. We have bend, we have taper, we have stretch. So we can taper it. Let's go into a different window. Let's go into the top view for tapering and start at the taper axis, end of the taper axis, the start distance, and then we've got, let's do, what can we do? Let's just do that with it. And then you can see we've tapered it off a little bit there, and we're getting some kind of interesting shapes with that. So those are our basic commands that we're just going to cover in this tutorial. Quite simply, we've made some solids using some basic shapes. We've used unioning and differencing so that we can give it even more nuances. And then we finally use some of the transform tools to add yet another dimension to it. Now, this gives us a very complex object, and there's a number of things that we can do with that. If we wanted to section that object and create a layered model out of pieces of cardboard, we have another tutorial which you can take a look at that will talk you through how you create a series of sections out of it. But just to finish this one off, if we perhaps were interested in 3D printing something like this, we can go to File, Export Selected. I have selected the object quite purposefully, and then we will go to the type of file that we require for 3D printing, which is an STL file. And I will save that on my desktop. I'll give it a name. Okay, and there we go. So now we have on the desktop a file for printing. Okay, thank you.